So the book we are going to talk today about is the book by Mr. Adam Smith. It's called The Wealth of Nations. It was published in 1776, which is the same year as the American Declaration of Independence. It's one of the most famous books in modern economics, because Adam Smith is also the father of modern economics. And this is an amazing book. It's quite a huge book, as you can see. So the book is very well written. Adam Smith was a philosopher. He's a book writer. He's also written a book on moral sentiments. It's another good book. So morality is another topic that he has picked up. Morality and economics never kind of go hand in hand. At least the Wall Street doesn't believe in being moral and being ethical. So is what I would presume. But Adam Smith really talks about both of them going hand in hand. So this is the book about morality. This is not a book about morality. This is a book about economics. And we're going to talk about this book. Now, there are three central premises of this book. Okay, number one premise is the fact of distribution of labor. So Adam Smith says that any advanced society is able to distribute its labor to an extent that each part of those labor distribution can be handled by individuals at the smallest possible unit of division. So what it means basically is that, let's say you've got a farmer, and the farmer basically tills the soil. He then puts the seed in, and then he waters the seed, irrigates it, and then he cuts the crop and then sells it. So he does everything himself. But if you look at an iPhone which is being built, or any device that you use today in today's world, everything is done in separate pieces. So an iPhone's battery is manufactured by somebody. The iPhone screen is manufactured by Samsung. Its A9 Bionic chip is manufactured by somebody, Samsung again there. So you would notice that because of the division of labor which exists in producing a very complex product, Apple is able to produce such a complex product. So likewise, division of labor is the crucial and key factor of any nation's advancement. So if you look at any advanced nations, all these nations which manufacture advanced and precision made stuff, like Germany for example, it makes precision engineering stuff. They are specializing in a particular area. So what he basically means is that nations should specialize in specific areas, and they would have expertise in particular area, and they should not focus on areas which are not really relevant to them, and get it done through somebody who can manage that process. Now, globalization, the whole concept of outsourcing also focuses on that, where you focus on your core ability and you outsource the rest of that to a third party who does the better job of it, and he does that job exclusively. So he is focused on improving that particular capability. It may be a minuscule and small part, but he's focused on that. Now the corollary to that is that people find their jobs meaningless, because they are doing a very small element of the entire job, and it is very important for the company to ensure that they convey the message of purpose to their employees, because otherwise the employees would feel that they are not really contributing to the success of the company, and they will always be under the impression that they are doing a very small work. And that is true, because they are doing a specialized work. And in fact, everybody except perhaps the really senior guys like the CEO or the CFO of an organization are doing specialized work, and this hampers their ability to sort of feel wanted or needed in their organizations. So that's one thing that Adam Smith says. The other thing Adam Smith talks about is the fact that labor and wages, which are both connected, and profits. So he says increasing the cost of labor. By increasing the cost of labor, you're not going to impact the profits of an organization. But if you increase the tax rates by a small margin also, or if you increase the because it's going to impact the profit margin directly, you are going to impact the profit margin organization. So it implicitly says that government should tax the companies lesser amount so that the company's profits are not impacted, and thus they are able to pay the higher wages to the laborers. And he implicitly tries to say that do not try to use wages as a reason for cost cutting, because they really are not that important a factor as much as are the profits itself, which are important. So that's another fundamental premise. And finally, the most important premise that Adam Smith talks about is the invisible hand. So he says that the markets which operate in the economy are operating under the self-interest of each individual. So it is not driven by benevolence for the other individual. So you're not opening a bakery shop because you like the society and you want to feed the society. No, they are saying the bakery owner is opening the bakery because he feels that is going to sell, and he wants to make the best of the capabilities he has and sell that as a product and make value out of it, because he wants to feed his children, or he wants to feed his kids or himself or whatever. Right, so Adam Smith says that it's not the benevolence of the baker which is making the bakery run; it is the self-interest. However, this very concept of self-interest is making that baker produce the best bread in the market. He's trying to compete with his, the side door baker, and so on and so forth. So the very fact that he's doing that is helping the society. So Adam Smith talks about an invisible hand. He says the self-interest in itself is becoming a reason for the society or the economy to improve. So it is by itself a thriving system. It doesn't need intervention by the government. Now this is important in the context of the fact that a lot of people today say that you need to control human behavior, you need to control the morality. How is it that you will decide if a person is going to be benevolent to the society or not? So how is it that a company will not take advantage of its customers? So those are questions which get asked, and a lot of times the regulations which are built are forcing people to are made antitrust laws which are primarily made because they want to feel that they want to make the society feel more secure. But Adam Smith says that that's not necessary beyond a point. I mean, yes, the sovereign or the nation needs to protect its employees from a military point of view, judiciary point of view. So those are important things. It needs to have a strong defense. It needs to have a strong, fair judicial system. So those are important things. But controlling the economy beyond a particular limit is not really important, is what Adam Smith says. He says that the economy is going to autocorrect itself, and it's going to automatically, if somebody is going to pay, charge you higher price for a product, or if he's going to swindle you, you will automatically start not buying from him. You will start changing your customers. So if Apple is producing an iPhone, and if it's overcharging its customer, and if the customer doesn't find value in that product, they will start switching to other organizations. So the reason somebody is able to charge you extra is because they are able to innovate, and they are able to create something which the market has not created. So they are charging for that particular thing, and the customer is quite price sensitive. He's saying don't take the customer for granted. Don't think the customer cannot think for himself. The customer is always thinking for himself, and he's always evaluating the best product in the market. And that is the primary reason which fundamentally talks about ensuring that the equilibrium which is built in the system is a self-sustaining one. It doesn't need government intervention. So implicitly, again, Adam Smith is talking about less government interventions, and he's talking about governments, the thinking that the government has, that it controls the future of its citizen, or it controls the economy, is not one. And this has been this has been practiced in different areas. For example, if you look at the Hong Kong's economy, it's a free market economy, and the free market economy, which follows the laissez-faire principle, says that everything is free and everybody has a fair ground to play there, and thus the economy grows because the market is free there, and the new players can come into play. Okay, and so there are live examples of Singapore, Hong Kong, which are free market economies, which have made it free for people to come and trade there and use their economy and their land and their place, and they have thrived and flourished in such economies. So that's what Adam Smith talks about when he says that the economy is self-correcting one. It doesn't need the intervention of a third party, and the third party's intervention is only necessary in things like controlling the defense. Of course, people need to be protected. Of course, people need to be fairly treated, and he talks about non-monopolization. So there is Crony Capitalism, which happens where the companies tend to influence the legislature. So they try to influence your MPs and your ministers by bribing them or giving them money. So he talks about the fact that that's something the government should focus more upon, and rather than sort of controlling all the elements of it. So it's a beautiful book. It's an amazing book. It's a highly recommended book. It's a very long book, of course, and it's very arduous to read it. Because the language which is used is 18th century English, and the sentences are very long. The sentences are extremely long, so one sentence looks like a paragraph, and you have to reread it. Okay, and it's a huge long book, more than 1,200 pages, and it's got 3 volumes, if you may say. So it's actually not one book, it's actually 3 books. There is book number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So and they are sort of concised in three books. But the best part of the fact is that Adam Smith was quite observant about his society, and he was able to glean things out of that particular, if you may say, rustic society. I mean, the society wasn't advanced during Adam Smith's days as much as it is today, but his ideas are so original. He's able to see things in a very different light. He also has another book called the book on moral sentiments. I don't remember the name of the book, but the fundamental pretext there is that he says that it has to be assumed that human beings as a creature or a community are moral beings. Okay, and that is fundamentally sort of in a way aligned with the second book, because though he believes that the human beings is run by his self-interest, he also talks about the fact that humans are morally good creatures, and they tend to sort of, though they have the self-interest, but they also have the cause of the humanity in their mind all the time. So they are not always driven by self-interest, they are also driven by benevolence to the society. So it's sort of it's an important factor, because end of the day, if you're going to be giving laissez-faire, if you're going to be opening up the society, you also have to trust your citizens, you have to trust your people, because end of the day you have to believe that every transaction is going to be morally right, and people are going to not misuse the system. And if they misuse the system, Adam Smith says that they're going to get punished over a period of time. They might make a few bucks here or there, but over a longer period of time, everybody will recognize that it's not worth misusing the system, because it will punish them. The punishment will come in the form of not being able to grow beyond a particular point. So you will tend to stay at a very small sort of segment. So if you have to grow beyond a particular limit or beyond a particular level in the economy, you got to ensure that ethics are part of your company culture. And that's perhaps the reason that most of large corporations are so focused on being ethical, because that sends out a clear message in line with Adam Smith's viewpoint of being ethical as well. So a very interesting book, a very interesting read. This book takes a lot of time. You can skim through some of the topics, because some of the topics don't relate to this modern society. He talks about colonization and talks about slaves, and he talks about a lot of rude societies. So those don't really apply anymore because those things have moved on. But the fact of the matter still remains is that the interactions in the society are very similar, and Adam Smith has been able to capture that gist very well. So before I let go, I want to also talk about Adam Smith personally. He never married. He was 67 years old when he died. He was a professor of philosophy in the Edinburgh University, and he was just not an economist. He was a great friend of David Hume, the great philosopher of those times. He also had met Benjamin Franklin. He is also in his book talked about how it is a in vain effort by the British government to fight the battle of the war of independence which USA was waging at that point in time, because he said it's a lost battle and Britain is losing more money in the battle to save the colonies rather than sort of letting go of the colonies. So he really said that that's not necessary and the colonies should be let gone very implicitly. So the book is full of implicitness. It talks highly about Great Britain. Of course, it puts France down in some sense. It keeps talking about how great the British economy is, and it also toms about queens and kings. So basically, he's been able to sort of use the book to convey his premise. At the same time, he didn't want to sort of be non-political. So he's been political. He's been right, because he was obviously quite conscious of the fact that if he gets onto the wrong books of the folks in UK, then in all likelihood the book might not get published, or the book might suffer other consequences. So he was very subtle, and he was very smart in ensuring that his book was well received by folks in the native country, which is very important, because you don't want to sort of, even though Britain may have its issues, you don't want to sort of highlight those issues. So you got to always ensure that that doesn't happen. So he puts down France in front of Britain, and he does a lot of those things very implicitly, and he doesn't go against the royalty. He also supports royalty. He says that they're necessary for sustaining the society. So those are some of the salient features of the book. It's a great book. You should read the book. The name of the book again is called The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Very good book, written in 1776, about 250 years ago. So very, very, very good book. So with that, I'll take leave and have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.